Let's get ready to throw down.
Welcome to the show, everybody. We have been doing this crazy, ridiculous thing for a year. And this show, the team, exactly. Al is drinking, if you can hear the ice cubes. Clint is also drinking, and you can't hear anything because he's tactical. And
Nan, show your glass.
Oh, yeah. Nan is also drinking.
John, what are you having?
I got some water over here, guys. I'm trying to take it easy. I'm old. I put in a lot of hours. The alcohol doesn't help. So, but we want to kind of talk about what we've done over this past year and like what we've learned about being, because we were close before, but obviously because we're around each other with such regular basis now, like, we're way closer than I would say that we were before this. And, I had to give Al props on Facebook and be like, man, I've learned a ton from this guy,
Yeah. And don't know that I earned them.
No, man. This version of me would not be here if you hadn't taken a shot on me. So that's the honest truth. And, being here on the show with you and the other three of you guys, like, has really, it really solidifies that I have to do it differently than you guys do, right? Just to feel comfortable and to feel in control. And that's like a really big thing for me. And so, it's nice to get that reinforcement, right? Of just like, okay, cool. I can do this differently, because sometimes, right, even though I'm pretty confident in my process and my abilities, sometimes it's like, man, what if we just tried to do it this way and stuff like that? So I hear how you guys do it, and don't take this as a knock, but it's like, man, I'm glad I don't have to do some of the stuff that you guys do, because it just wouldn't work for me, right? It's so far out of my comfort zone that I just wouldn't be successful in those kinds of roles.
Yeah.
So
I will tell you that, my biggest, my info gather that I've had over the last 18 months has been not only just from this show, but being around you guys personally, professionally, being able to look at somebody that mirrors a personality of one of you three, and knowing that we've had 100 conversations, and I've had that conversation with you guys, and being able to slide those people with your, you literally, I put your face on their face.
Yeah.
And am able to have intelligent conversations without having the knowledge base that you guys have shown me, with the, especially psychologically it's huge, right? Not having that knowledge base now would be detrimental to everything that I do. So, I think we all challenge everybody, and at least we have since the beginning a year ago, first podcast is like, if you guys don't have a team or a friend circle or a professional circle built up of multiple personalities and different spectrums, you guys aren't growing, man. You're just not.
Well, and I can speak to this, and it's cathartic in a certain sense to be able to get things off your chest that either are, and we do this behind the scenes a lot of times. So, we come to the show to talk about a particular topic, but between the four of us, there's a lot of discussion about how we each individually handle something. But you're exactly right. And Nan will probably chime in here after me, being able to understand that I'm okay in my skin, and, we can disagree about things, and we all are successful at, paying our bills, getting the job done, supporting our family, the reason you do go to work. And we're very passionate and like the jobs that we have for the most part. Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my 2 cents on spending a year hanging out with a ton of conversations. And I'm telling you, this is, sometimes it's a grind to get here, because we work full jobs. This is not our job. This is our passion to, talk about our travels and how we've, handled being sales professionals. So sometimes it's like, Thursday, I'm like, wow, I got to get home, or I got to get to a computer so I can get on this thing. But yeah, guys, hats off. I appreciate everything you guys have brought to my world. And let's many more years of this kind of stuff.
Nan, what about you? Other than just how to put up with like 3 jackasses, like what have you learned in the past year?
Well, first, since you said that, I wasn't going to start with this. People are listening to this, this is might be a little nauseating to them, but I love you three so much. Like, it is amazing to me how I think, and I hate it. I was really not going to say love because you expect that, right?
Well, you used love and amazing all in the same. Yeah, man. That's
hashtag consistency.
Exactly.
Yeah. But, the thing that, you gain such perspective on failure, success in our conversation. And I hope that's a takeaway for everyone, that you see that if it's so pertinent for today, our society, because the four of us are so different, right? But we have just testified to how much we really bond and we get along because we grasp the differences instead of, and yes, we talk about it in sales, but what the biggest takeaway should be, I believe, is that we're all different, and getting out there and communicating, knowing how to communicate, and communicating with other people that are different than you is so very important, because when you do that, when you spend that time communicating, I think that leads you to more understanding and caring and developing relationships with other people. I think something that I am seeing in our society, not to get on a soapbox, is, but here I go anyway, right? But is we become so polar. We just want to have our opinion, and we want everyone to jump into our opinion, and that's all that we fight for. Well, how silly is that? If I said, oh, you know what, I really just want to be comfortable in sales and basically in life, I just need to be around people that are calm and sweet and want the best for others. Well, and that's a little honey, a little too sweet probably, but because believe me, I can be a complete jerk. But if that were true, then how boring would life be? I would not be successful because I would not have built these other relationships, and that's perfect for the four of us. Because, man, if we can do this and have this kind of relationship with each other, that Clint's far away, but the passion that he puts into his job, he also puts into this podcast. And the reason we started the podcast, I think a lot of it is his passion for the four of us getting together and talking. We all get together and talk, and John's passion for just making this happen, and he keeps us on task. And we love Melissa. Y'all don't ever get to see Melissa, but she is the fifth wheel of, the fifth spoke in this wheel, and she is so important. And it's just amazing. Of course, Al is the one that just makes it so exciting. I think it be in just the passion that he has for everything, how that's just the way the eye is. And then my part of just I love these three guys so much, and I think that in this year of doing this, again, not to be redundant, but the perspective that I have for my failures and successes by talking about it. So what's the takeaway? Communicating with each other, communicating with your clients, with friends, with other people. Don't just try to find people that are like you. Get out there and I'm going to end with, look what Jesus did. I think he's the perfect example of, because he was the perfect man. He was the perfect everything. Yes, right. But he did not just go hang out with other kings, gods, but, the many titles. He went to the woman at the well. He went to, you could go on and on. He hung out with fishermen that, at that time that wasn't like a prestigious thing. It really is important to know the different, hang out with, understand, ask questions of people that are not like you. Yeah, anyway, thank y'all so much.
No, that's huge, man. And we all, I'm sure I'll speak for everybody here, but we all appreciate that because, and we kind of knew that you would go down that road of passion for this. And the thing is you spoke for all of us because that's your personality, right? And some of us up here, we don't have that personality to speak to that level. We feel it, but we're not willing to put that out there because that's our personality, right? And that's what makes us us, right? And when you talk to people that speak in Nan's language, you've got to be able to slide to that language that you speak. You know, I always look at it to the perspective of, if I went to China tomorrow and I spoke zero Chinese language, I wouldn't get along very well, right? Unless they spoke my language. And that's not fair. And so I always look at that relationship as a buyer seller, right? Why is it fair for me to expect you to speak my language, right? And personality wise, business wise, politically, religiously, like, it's not fair for you to just pull your reins back and say, this is the only language I speak, and you guys are, I'm right and you're wrong. And what I've absolutely gained over this entire experience with you guys is that we've had in-depth discussions till 2 a.m. over religion. We've had in-depth discussions over business, politics. We're all from different walks of life. But what always finds it interesting is that the next day we're back into the texting circle trying to find out more about why you think that way and why I think that way. And that's the whole point. And that's why it works so well in sales, to stay in this psychological battle, so to speak, between everybody, is that the more you find out about John and Nan and Al, or D, I, S, and C in the DISC personality spectrum, the more you're able to communicate and have intelligent conversations about, how can I think this way and somebody else thinks so far opposite to me and we're both right? How is that possible in the world? And it happens every day in sales. It happens every day in religious talks and politics. We see it in politics right now on the news like crazy, right? You got to be this way or that way. Well, that's so, that is, could be the worst statement ever. It's so not, right? I can tell you all 4 of us get along and we all believe something completely different.
Oh, yeah.
Because
on multiple fronts.
on multiple fronts. And
on
yeah,
just about everything, actually.
That's true.
Yeah, truly.
We don't even sell the same, right? Which is
that's right. But
really,
we're all successful. We all live and breathe. We all have raised families. We're raising families. We all have certain things. We all make money. We all live in the same space. We all live and breathe air. And that's tough for me to say. And if you go back a year from now, you would never guess that I'd be saying this on the year anniversary episode. But I mean, truly, humanity is what it is. Like, we're all here. We're all trying to survive. And you survive in sales. You survive in professional and personal life. And you can't do it without other people.
Man.
Well, it takes a village, and the village is made up of, every one of our personalities multiple times. And if you're going to get up in the morning and go out for an endeavor, expect to find all of us out there in your community. Everyone, the 4 faces here, over and over again. And you're going to see us, right? We're the people that you're going to talk to, that you're going to sell to, that you're going to be married to, that you're going to raise as children. The deeper seated, conversation is, not everybody's you. Actually, nobody's you. Yeah. But there are certain people who fall into your category, and they may annoy you more than we do, right? If you take the right perspective, you're going to like everybody across the aisle versus the people sitting on your corner.
Yeah. What's funny is you brought up 2 magnificent points there. One, nobody's you, right? You're completely different than everybody else around you, whether you believe it or not. But you'll believe in fingerprints, right? Every fingerprint, every snowflake's different, but you don't believe that you're different than everybody else. Is kind of a contradictory statement, right?
Yeah.
The other side of that too, Doc, you spoke to being a village, and it's funny because if you had a bunch of farmers, that's freaking great. You'll have a great farm, but nobody will cook the dinner. Nobody will teach the kids. Nobody will fight for it, right? So how do you know all of that knowledge and then believe that everybody should be like you? It's a crazy mentality to think, right?
So true.
For sure.
And here's what you find, all right, what I find myself, you want the best for everybody when you know a lot of different people, right?
Yeah.
And you then want everybody to be successful. So in my opinion, or, in my approach is, if every one of my sales endeavors and the process I go through enriches the person on the other side, and I do a really, really good job, that has value beyond the money, right? Because it solves a problem. It makes their life better. There's so much that sales brings to the arena that's overlooked in the aspect of humanity through bonding and rapport, right? The ability to interact with your fellow human in a really positive way that's going to solve a problem, provide a solution, and you get to do it. You get to be the forefront. You get to work through the pushback. You get to work through the avoidance of them solving a problem. Because people aren't really reticent in many cases, or they're confused. There can be a couple of different reasons to handle an issue that's sitting on their plate, and, now sometimes it's part of the everyday workload, but so many times you just get to dig in a little bit deeper and understand people a little bit more, and it makes you better. It makes them better.
Yeah. The thing that I'm waiting for, because Clint did it, and I was going to say the same thing, and this has been my secret sauce for as long as we've been working on the show, is that if I'm stuck and I can't figure out, based upon like the questions and where we are in the conversation, where they are, is I'm like, okay, who are they most like? Right? Who are they most like? Right? Are they cutting up and telling stories? Are they directed to the point? Do they just want to like hang out with me and make sure that I'm like good and everything else? And I do the same thing. I'm like, okay, cool. This is Clint. How do I need to adjust to make sure that if I was talking to Clint right now, I was being impactful? If I'm talking to Al right now, how can I be the most impactful? And I use that in just about every conversation that I do, because I'm constantly like checking, like, okay, I made an assumption earlier. Am I still good? Okay. Yes. They're still checking all the Clint boxes or the Al boxes or whatever. And the thing that I'm waiting for everybody else to figure out is like, this is a clinic. Like every week, like you can hear how I talk differently than the other three of you. And the things that I talk about are different. Right. And sometimes that leads to mystification, right? Because, we had an episode just that we recorded before this, and we were all kind of heated, and it was just heated because I didn't explain myself well about like why I don't have to follow a certain kind of follow-up process and things like this. And there's like every week of this thing, right? And I get to hear it more than you guys do because we're here and we're working on it and doing all of this stuff here as part of the process. But each one of these episodes is a clinic in how these different corners communicate and what's important to them and stuff like that. And I'm waiting. I mean, it might take another year before people start to just be like, cool, like, let me just turn in for my disc tune-up this week, to make sure that I'm listening for these different kinds of people and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's always funny to me because I don't have a lot of social media. I'm not a big I'm not on the Facebook. I have an Instagram. I have a LinkedIn. I follow other people, but I'm not a big poster. I don't put that stuff out there. And unfortunately, to be honest with you, that's kind of the way the world turns right now, especially with the younger crowd. 40 to 16 years old. That's where your information share is, right? And it's funny to me because I watch people post all the things that we talk about and live through daily because somebody else quoted it, right? So they post quotes. Hey, check this quote out. What do you think about it? And it's like, no, don't check it out. What do you think about it? Live it, right? You need to live the quote. Like, stop trying to take credit for posting something and live the quote, because, I just to test the theory, as a matter of fact, today, I never have done that before. So I posted a quote from Albert Einstein. And it said, a question that always makes me hazy is it me or is everybody else crazy? Right. And it was always kind of funny because like, I always wonder that, is it me? Do you call yourself crazy or is it everybody else that's crazy? And it's such a conundrum, but it's funny because as soon as I post that, within 30 seconds, boom, like, heart, great quote, blah, blah, blah. But I can post some real information. I can post this podcast and get nothing, right? Because nobody wants to take the time to truly dig into themselves and learn why, this touches me in a certain way. It's just easier to put an emoji face on something and get rid of it. But my challenge to why I'm saying that is that here's a quote, and we're going to dissect it between the four personalities. My challenge is, if you're listening to this or know somebody that could benefit from this, is don't like it, don't thumbs up it, listen to it, breathe it, soak all the information in, because information is power, man. It is such powerful stuff. And the more you can do it, picture yourself a sponge soaking up water. If you can soak it all in and then collect the information that fits for you and then go puke it out in the world, that's what makes you.
Well, Clint just hit on something, because if you're sitting on your couch or, and there's no value in your life because you don't do anything else, that's usually not America, right? It just isn't, right? We all have jobs and we have families and we have other people we talk to. So if you do any of those three things, the value in what we're talking about is immense, right? It transcends just sales. It is, if you communicate with anybody in your world, and goodness knows, for as much as I yak, I'm not the best communicator because I fall short many, many times. But to come back and sit here and then figure out, wow, I need to listen more, talk less. I need to be, empathy I have, but then I need to validate, because sometimes, so you can find all your mistakes right here in this podcast.
Sure. And Doc, and you know better than anybody, talking is not communication.
No.
They're two totally different things.
Yep.
You are absolutely correct. And I'm guilty of talking and not communicating, probably more so than the other three of you guys. And I own it. And there's the value. Know what you don't fool yourself just because it's coming out of your mouth. That doesn't mean shit. When it comes out of you. Go ahead.
I had a golf lesson once, and a guy told me, he taught me three things, right? And he said, maybe that's too much for you. And I said, nope, don't say another word. I just need repetitions, right? Like, leave me alone for about 30 more balls. And he's like, okay. So he stepped back, and I watched him out of the corner of my eye cross his arms. And I hit one, I hit two, and on the third one, I said, don't say a word. I know what I did wrong. Let me fix it, right? Yeah. Like, you can tell me all the things, but I have to get my reps in. I have to figure out, I have to know. And to credit this instructor, young guy, he said, well, if you know what you're doing wrong, you can fix it. And it was like, yep, I need bullet points. I need lessons, right? I know that I suck at this. I'm trying to get better. You gave me three things, but don't give me three things and then on the next swing, give me five more things, because overload. It is overload, and it's not instruction anymore. It's what you think I need to be doing based on what you do, not what I do. Mm-hmm. So buyer seller relationship and in sales and leadership, right? These things all apply. You got to do it in small morsels. You got to give wins, right? You've got to, I'm a big fan of giving people wins because my personality accepts wins so much that I just think that goes leaps and bounds for people when I tell somebody to do something and they don't do it to my exact design in my head, but they got it done. You need to reward that person of getting it, getting Absolutely. It done and winning, right? And then if you want it done different way, you need to explain, hey, thank you for getting that done. Next time I want to see this a little bit different. Mm-hmm. But if you say, I need this done differently, well, then now they're a failure and now they have to do something. So understanding that personality concept and little things like that as a leader in life, as a father, as a coach of a soccer team, as a sales leader, as a salesperson to your customer, man, these things are so huge. And to be honest with you, I challenge you to find this on any other podcast, because I just don't think you're going to find it.
Wow. Well put.
I love that story. And I've talked a little bit about teaching Kung Fu and being a Kung Fu coach and everything. And I used to be that guy, right? I would, here's all the things that are wrong with everything that you just did right there. And was an overcoach, right? I would just burden people with all of this stuff. And then I read this book called The Inner Game of Tennis, which is like kind of where the whole peak performance idea kind of like comes from originally. Super solid book, but he talks about like, look, whenever somebody does something once, it's going to be terrible, right? They don't need any feedback between rep 1 and rep 2, because like they're just glad that they didn't like destroy the world on the first rep, right? So they don't need any coaching on the second rep, right? What do you think you did bad? Well, I did this and this and this bad. Okay, what are you gonna do next time? I'm gonna do this and this and this. Okay, do it now, right? We can only hold so much in our heads. And, whenever we get too intellectual, right, about things that require like some balance and some art to it, we put ourselves in positions to where it's really hard to win. So I love that whole thing, man. I've never heard that story before. That's huge.
But
Yeah,
John,
funny, John,
go ahead.
because
Go
John,
ahead.
you and Melissa actually had reached out recently, like, hey, you're a pretty good golfer. Why don't you teach us how to golf? And the funny thing is like, I have accepted that challenge in my head so hard that I've come up with a million different ways to try to start that conversation with you, knowing how you are and how Melissa is to a little bit of a degree, but knowing how you are to a very high degree, and knowing that I can't do certain things for you that I would do with my buddies from back home or my wife or my kids. Teaching you as an adult as a high corner C in the disc spectrum is one of the most challenging things I would guess to teach, unless you know how that person thinks. And so tasks, goals, information overload, like I have all this plan, and we just recently talked about this, but in my head, I am getting this, so that if we ever go do this for real, which I know we do, because we're both task oriented, we're not going to let this slide.
No,
I'm going to take you to the range, and on day one, I'm going to introduce you to something that is geared to you. I'm going to sell you on the game of golf because I know how you think, but that's only because I'm aware of who I am and who you are, that I can do that. But and you guys are probably hearing way more compassion out of me than you've ever heard in the years, which is funny, because it's not because I never had it. It's because I don't like to show it, right? It's not me. It's not natural for me.
But Clint, man, dude, we know different, right? I speak for the
Agreed.
Crowd, man.
Yeah,
sure.
Love your approach to life. And you just gave our viewers a little insight of what we see on a regular basis, right? That sometimes, doesn't get translated, because we get on a topic and we just talk because we like to teach, we like to talk. But man, the 4 people sitting here, I got that right. There's 4 of us here this time. Man, we are so passionate about the lives we live, the families we have, the friendships that are just right here in this box, and then many, many others. So when you live an endeavor to understand and be an active part of your family, your community, your company, and the world that we live in, guys, this opens up so many doors to people that will love you, trust you, call you, ask your advice. You will become this nice little magnet to a lot of people seeking the same. Now, this is better than religion to me, right? In the sense that this is how humanity advances itself, through these kind of endeavors and discussions to make everybody better. End of story.
Well, about a month ago, hold on real quick. So about a month ago, we were doing one of these sessions, and we're knocking out some recordings. And as usual, we kind of like chat and pregame and get a little riled up with each other, just kind of talking smack. And I was having a rough day, a rough week. And Clint, the next day, he like texted me, and he's like, hey man, did you read my email? And it's like 8 a.m. I'm like, no, man, I haven't read your email yet. He's like, well, go fucking read it and call me. And I'm just like, God damn it, I'm in trouble. What did I do? And so then I go and I read this email, and this just speaks to how really, really, really good Clint is at this thing. And the whole top of the thing was all about this show. Like, hey, I've got this idea about these shades, and we got to do these things and everything else like this. And then he's like, cool, now that that's out of the way. And on a separate line, he goes, I had to say all that shit just that way you would be invested in this email, and now you'll read the things that you need to hear that you might not be ready to. And then after that was like this like amazingly nice, thoughtful like email. And I'm so blown away.
Hook, line, and sinker, man.
So blown away because not only is this like unheard of from Clint, but dude, got me so hard because I'm just like, I'm reading this thing and I'm reading this line. I'm like, damn it, son of a bitch, I'm in, you know? And then I plowed through the rest of the email and I was awestruck. I was like, man, that level of command of like knowing all that information, because here's the deal. Clint doesn't write long anything to my knowledge, you know?
No.
So for him to put himself so squarely in my shoes to do this thing and have all of this fluff at the top that he knows that I'm going to geek out on. And then like the compliments and like the nice things and like, hey man, like you got to be a little bit easier on yourself at the bottom. And I'm just like, I'm invested, you know? I was blown away, right? Because there's more levels to this. There's always another level, right? And so if you're listening to this and you're in sales and you think you've got it all figured out and you have that mentality, somebody else doesn't have that mentality, and they are working daily and weekly, and they're listening to stuff like this, they're reading books, and they are going to outperform you. So the minute you think you got it figured out, you need to sit down and like figure out where you don't. And like, that's how you get really good.
And I'll tell you, to be honest with you, the challenge for me was always, so I read, I'll throw a couple names out there. Ian Altman was a guy I met quite a few years ago. He writes a lot of sales books. He's got a lot of sales conferences that he speaks at and stuff. And look, I would never say a bad word about the guy because honestly, I just don't know him. But what I do know is that he's instructed people to follow a certain path, right? If you do this, you get this. If you do this, you get this. And even sitting, I mean, I've literally been in a conference room with 8 people and him at the head of the table giving a speech about how you sell. And he's not wrong. And I don't want to give that impression that he's wrong. But there's so many other variables to the equation that he's talking about that I wanted to dive into to make it better, right? So you're giving me the 30,000 foot view from an airplane. I want to talk about the furniture inside the house that we're looking at.
Yeah.
And those are 2 very different conversations. And when you start breaking down personalities, and it's a simple way to sum it up is the psychological side of selling, right?
Yeah.
You're not, that's the way I describe it, right? I focus on the psychological side of selling. And if you're me as a personality out there listening to this, which you probably aren't because you're a high corner D, and this is all bullshit to you. But if you are listening, I will tell you this. You can only get better by knowing the knowledge of what everybody else is thinking. Think of it not as education, think of it as manipulation, because that's what gets me through it, right? And I think we've talked about this maybe 9-10 months ago. We talked about this a little bit because I said that word manipulation and everybody just kind of like, whew, wait a second, what are you talking about? That's negative. Don't talk about that. No, I manipulate people every day. I need my kids to do something. I give them, hey, if you eat your dinner, I'll give you a Tootsie Roll. That's manipulation. I hate to point it out, but that's exactly what that is, right?
Yeah.
And there's manipulation for good and there's manipulation for bad.
I was going to say, you just hit on that. If you're helping somebody be better, that's a positive form of manipulation, right?
So to John's story, right? I wrote John an entire email that was 900 sentences longer than I've ever written anybody in my life. But I knew
5 paragraphs.
But if I put the 5th paragraph in the first paragraph, it wouldn't have got it received. It wouldn't have got written. It was manipulation. Read this, get warm and fuzzy. And that's not weakness on John, and that's not strength on me. It's just personality talking to a different personality. And that's the way it goes, right? Now the other way around, if John would have sent me the mushy stuff up top and got me, I wouldn't have read the last part of it because I would have got bored and said, fuck this thing, I'm out, right? That's just what would have happened. So you got to know who you're talking to and how to respond to them to get them engaged, to get them the information they need. And it's not weakness and it's not strength. The one thing I love about disc personalities, and I'll shut the hell up. One of the things I love about all of this stuff is that nobody's right and nobody's wrong.
Yeah. That
was a hard conundrum for me to get over in my life. That, what do you mean I'm a high corner D, so I must win all the time? Like that I'm the champion, I'm the king, give me the crown. And it was so far from the truth, and it took me a long time to figure that out.
Okay, but Clint, to that point, I want you to be the winner because you're going to drag me up the sales ladder with all those wins in your corner when I'm selling to you, right? And if you take somebody's personality, and I see it as same thing. Manipulation is not a bad word, but if I ask you a bunch of questions in the right format that allows you to self-manipulate up the ladder for people who need that, and I'm aware that some people need a little more guidance, and I'll go ahead and step into the forefront of that. This ties together in a win-win scenario. Not only do we win, but the people that hopefully that we associate and sell to and are part of, they win as well.
Yeah.
So
the absolute is coaching, right? You're talking to me. Coaching is a form of manipulation to every person. A football coach,
absolutely.
Right?
I was going to say 7th grade football, man.
Mother effing roll tide. Nick Saban he is the ultimate manipulator. He's got a degree in psychology, and he's got a winning team every single year. Do you think that's because he has the best recruits? Yeah, that's some of it. Do you think it's
because he won and they want to go there,
exactly.
Right? He's got he's siphoned the hose. Now it's flowing, right?
But at one point, I was an Alabama fan before Nick Saban was a coach, and they weren't so good. It was not fun to watch every Saturday. It sucked. We lost every single game in the SEC. And Nick Saban took over in it, and there was a rebuilding year, and we had to hear all that bullshit. And all I can remember is hearing my family members. I can remember seeing all the stuff on social media about how, Nick Saban's going to bring the psychological side of coaching to the table, and everybody was against it until he won. And he won again, and he won again and again and again. And now everybody's like, oh, well, there's no other way to coach but besides learning personality traits and learning how to coach kids differently. You yell at one kid, he accepts it. You yell at a second, he quits you. One's right, one's wrong. And you can't coach everybody the same way, and you can't sell to everybody the same way. Nick Saban proved that over and over.
Great analogy. Yeah, well put.
I had a poker coach there for a while when I was playing a lot of poker and trying to do it, or was doing it full time. And we were looking at this hand, and we're talking about the details of it. And I was like, well, what do you think about this? And he was like, well, do you have any history with the player? And I was like, history. And he was like, yeah, like how many hands, like what's your read of him? Like, what do you think about him? And I was like, well, I don't know. And he goes, then this hand isn't good enough to play in this spot if you don't have history with this person.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, because like there's this line in poker that you don't play the cards, you play the player, and like I've heard that line over and over and over again, but it wasn't until like in that moment where this guy was like, you know what, this hand is fine for this kind of player. It's not fine for this kind of player. But if you don't know what kind of player this person is, you don't need to be here with these kinds of cards. And I think about that because like a lot of how I talk about sales and coach sales and help people with sales is very focused on being consistent, right? Like how much equity do we have in this situation? Is it enough that it warrants more time, or should we, test that assumption? Should we kind of like, check the pulse and figure out where we are? Is this worth more conversation or not? So I love Clint's idea that there's no wrong way to do it, because there's not, right? There are deals that I missed out on because my process doesn't match up with theirs, and that's totally okay. I have to be really okay with that fact, because I'm not trying to close everybody, right? The people that I work with fit within a very tight, narrow range, and that makes it easier for me to do as much as I do being as small as I am, right? That changes at different parts of the game, and there's no wrong way, which is so important, because for so many years I thought there was one way, and I thought that I needed to like check those boxes and do these things, and it didn't really seem like I had it in me, for like a very long time to be that Don Draper type of smooth, silver-tongued bastard, and stuff like this, and all of these things. It just wasn't ever in there. So for a long time, I felt like an imposter, right? Because, and then we started working with coaches and trying to figure this stuff out. And I knew all of it, but I didn't have the reps, right? Like I didn't have the repetitions. I hadn't figured this out in a way for me to do it like as me and feel totally fine with it all the way through. And that's That's my biggest takeaway is you have to, it's not enough to know about the other things. You have to be self-aware about yourself, right? Because you might know, okay, well, I think I'm an I, but until you understand like really about like how do I's view conflict and people and tasks and all of these things and know that you fit in that quadrant, some of this is still going to be out of your reach. It's not going to be easy for you to like wrap your hands around and use in conversations.
So you bring up a good point whenever the hope, and I'm stammered here for a second, is to embrace the weaknesses and discover where you could do better, right? Yeah. Because too many times we just walk in and we want to hang our hat on what you did well. And that's good. I mean, we need the comfort of that. But the real challenge and where people excel is when they overcome the things that they don't do very well.
Exactly.
Right? We talked about coaching and stuff like that. Coaching becomes, first of all, a self-fulfilling endeavor, but you're taking people who don't have a certain level of proficiency at whatever event it is. And you're interjecting this process to make them better. Well, that's all this is for all of us, right? Yeah. That's all life really is a process of hopefully endeavors that make us better on all the fronts that we just talked about. Absolutely. And you got to go to work to eat. And if sales is your game, well, guess what? There's a process, and we seem to be losing our staff here, bro.
A little bit, yeah.
I don't know if we're the
1 year and out. 1 year and out.
I was going to say, is that – hold on. Did you get a resignation notice from the other two?
We talked about keeping this one short, and then as normal, we're running a little bit long, and we should be wrapping up. I want to kind of give Clint.
Well, then why don't you and I just wrap this thing up, man? We're the only two still online.
I think Nan might be around there.
There she is.
You had to catch a call. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Man, always on the clock.
Wow, love it, man. It's 9:20, and you're burning the midnight oil. So, Nan, you want to chime in here a little bit?
I think I stated how I feel about our 1 year. Okay. I think that just consistency. John just said it. It's really important. Relationship, knowing who you're talking to. What do you say, Al? You always say, know your audience, and I'm just thankful that I know the four of y'all. The three of y'all.
Because we lost our fourth musketeer is gone to
that far.
So, as we're kind of wrapping up here, I really want to thank the people who are not on this show who help us do all the things that we do.
Oh, absolutely. Right? Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, go.
Melissa, who does the transcription and does a lot of the social stuff and does a lot of the, so much stuff. Daphne, who does a lot of the marketing, who's been killing it for us and really, really appreciate that. Carlos, who works on the website for us. Paul, who was doing all the audio stuff for us on the front end and is still like a very, very, very good resource. If you need audio help, please reach out to Paul. He's a super solid person to know.
Or reach out to us and we'll connect you with Paul.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. But, there's other people here, but, this is something we're incredibly passionate about and love it that, if you've been listening since the beginning, thank you so very much. If you've been listening for only a couple of episodes still, thank you.
One thumb.
Yeah.
Two for everybody, one for the newbies. You'll get two next year, baby. You'll get two next year. Keep working.
If you guys don't listen and there's no value in this or whatever, then nobody's here and there's no one for us to talk to each week. But, the comments and the emails and the questions and the people who want to take the assessments, thank you so much. Like that's why we're
John,
here. Yes,
I'm gonna also jump in here, and this is gonna sound a little hokey, but it's really in my heart to say this. And if we're not somebody that resonates with you, find somebody who does, guys. Sales can be amazing. It can be one of the best professions on the face of the earth with so many freedoms and the ability to call your own shots. If we're not sinking in with you, don't give up. Don't walk away from this. And you probably don't. Maybe I'm being a little egotistical to think that you'd quit on sales if we couldn't help you. Go find somebody that can coach you, because we've all been coached. We've all coached each other. Get into something similar to this that makes you better than you were yesterday and more successful. You'll feed your family better. You'll feed yourself better. You'll help your community. And yes, it'll be a better project. Don't go it alone. Don't ever go it alone. You don't have to.
You know, Clint's phone died, so he's not going to be joining us. But Al brings up a really good point. My very first coach, one time I was talking to him about how competitive it was, you know, for like sales coaching and everything. And he goes, you know, not everybody's going to get it from me, and that's totally okay. And I have to be okay with that, or else every other person who's trying to help people out is a competitor, and I don't want to live in that world. And I was like, my mind was just like broken, right? And it's actually done a lot to reframe like how I think about competition. And Jeff, who was my old business partner, you know, he was in the Kung Fu school with us, right? And Al can vouch for how much we talk about structure and foundational components in your footwork and everything. And Jeff had been in the school for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, and we started working together. So we started working out more on the weekends. And the very first session, he was like, okay, don't treat me like everybody else. Like, treat me like you're going to get me to where you are. And so, man, I'm pounding him. I'm like, your structure sucks. Your structure sucks. Your structure sucks, for like an hour and a half. And then he goes, man, I said, what? He goes, I really wish somebody had told me how important structure was. And my jaw just dropped for a moment, because that's all we talk about, right?
Agreed. Yeah, I'm laughing because I'm laughing with you. Yeah.
It wasn't until that moment that you know, there's that line, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? And that's what happened right there. It took me beating him. And like, I mean, I was pummeling him like over the head, structure, footwork. And for him to finally be like, oh, that's important. And I'm like,
but he bought into what you had to say because
Absolutely.
of some of the groundwork that got laid. And there's the message out to our audience here. If for some reason you're struggling, compare, contrast, go look at other people and what they have to say, right? And if you have any questions about that, hey, if you've been our audience, drop us an email, drop us a text that says, hey, I was listening to somebody else and they're not exactly saying what you're saying. Let's talk about that dichotomy, right? Because wherever you get your information, as long as it's of value and you can see some tangible results from it, then my thought would be, don't give that up. You don't have to give us up. You can have both at the same time. But at a certain level, the more information that you'll act on, because if it just goes in the ear, gets in the cortex, but if you're not walking those feet, moving that mouth, engaging in the reps that's necessary to perfect whoever said whatever they said to you as far as a sales technique or sales endeavor, then you're not getting anywhere. You're just processing information with no outcome. And that's not what this show's about, man. Take the action steps to use some of the stuff that we're bringing to the table here and make yourself better.
And on that note, and then we'll wrap, because we did talk about something that I've been working on for myself to make some of this stuff easier. And Al asked me to like share this here. So here's your big sales nugget for today. There are techniques in sales that are going to make you better, but until you feel like you can do them, right? And you can do them, right? Like, this is largely a mindset issue. But until you know that you can do them, you won't. Right. And if you only do them in front of your prospects, it's going to feel like a gimmick that you're doing just in front of your prospects to get business. And for a lot of people, you're going to feel this kind of weird dichotomy of you as a person and you as a salesperson. And that is making your life a lot harder. So there are parts of this, right? Framing and, you know, pushing back and overcoming objections and, you know, setting expectations and buy-in and permission and all these things we talk about on here. The easiest way that I have found to take the hardest stuff that I do not feel comfortable doing is by doing it with people that I know and I love and I respect, right? Because I know that I can challenge Al on an agreement that we have and it's not going to blow up in my face, right? So that gives me momentum and motivation. It makes it easier to do it in front of a prospect. So reps are that important. They are the fundamental thing about what is holding you back, because it's all mental. It's all mental. We make it as complex as we do. It's not, it doesn't have to be that hard. So yeah, Nan, Al, do you guys have anything else before we wrap this thing? And
That was really a good ending statement.
oh,
Really.
well, thank you so much.
That was really good.
No, I got nothing else to add, guys. I mean, John, you just said it all. And yeah, well done.
Awesome. So thank you so much for putting up with us for a year. Thank you to Carlos, Stephanie, Melissa for all the help. We would not be still here doing this. And Paul and all these people that have helped us out and given us advice and worked with us on this thing. A couple of quick things. If you have a sales question or if you have a thing you would like us to talk about on the show, send me a text. My number is 817-345-7449. We'll talk about it on the show. You can sign up for updates, other things I have going on. The practice thing is super important. So I'm going to put out a little bit of maybe kind of like inside baseball, but if you're not getting enough reps, if you're not getting enough practice, I have a place for you to come practice, right? If you want to find out more about it, please just text me. It's very low stakes. It's not super expensive, but there's no reason for you to be saying something for the first time in front of a prospect. Come do it 4 or 5 times. Make sure you're really comfortable and you can own it and you know what's going to happen after that so that way you're prepared.
And I'll add to that. If anybody wants to talk to any one of the 4 of us on the team, go through John, because it gets confusing if we all throw all our stuff out there. Go and just say, hey, I'm reaching out. I mean, this could be the difference between feeding your family and not feeding your family. And I don't say that lightly because we've all had months where we didn't earn dick, right? Yeah. And then we've had months where we knocked it out of the park. And we go through those scenarios. So we will talk to you. We are here for you. Absolutely. And don't just listen, utilize us. Let us know how we could help you even more. I mean, this has been a year of learning for us. I mean, we just kind of came together and through this thing. This thing just kind of materialized over a little bit of wine and a sales convention and hanging out and having other people come and talk to us. We want that kind of attitude. We want you to understand, there's a certain amount of money that we got to keep the lights on. But beyond that, I mean, there's the real budget conversation. But beyond the budget conversation, we're just super passionate about being as helpful and as successful. Because when we coach you or help you, you'll help us. Because you'll present a problem that we've either faced and we want to reanalyze and make sure we got it right. I mean, we go as far as we can see and we see how to go further. Help us see how to go further. It takes a village.
That was awesome. We're going to leave it right there on that. Thank you so much for everybody. Thank you to Nanette and Al and Clint, who's not here with us right now. But it's been an awesome year. We're going to keep this thing going. Once again, if you're stuck on something, if you want more information about place to practice, assessments, how to follow us, how to stay in contact with us, how to ask us questions, 817-345-7449. Shoot us a text and we'll get it figured out. We'll either talk about it on the show or we might answer you offline. If you need an assessment, please reach out to us. It's not enough to understand how the other people think. You need to know where you sit in these bubbles, because that is how you actually start to push the envelope, crush your comfort zone, and that's where you start to improve. Thank you so much for everybody. Have a great night. We'll see everybody next week. Cheers.
Bye.